but it represents north, south, east, and west to the pagans. Or some, it represents the human body. Because aren't we, in fact, in the shape of a cross? The upper section corresponding to the north wind and our head and intelligence. The base, the south wind, or the seat of fire and passion, fire in the belly, fire in the heart. The right beam is the east wind, where the source of life and love, and the left beam, the gentle wind from the spirit land, the dying breath, and that journey into the unknown. It's like we're being pulled in 4 directions. I framed several of those black and white pictures of crosses from Père Lachaise, and they have hung in nearly every home that I've lived in since then. They've moved with me, and as I've matured, the depth of my understanding of the cross has actually grown right along with me. When I first brought those pictures home, I was chastised a bit by my friends. They knew I wasn't a Christian at the time, especially, and pictures of cemetery crosses struck them as a bit morbid. It seemed to me, though, to represent a truth that went beyond the idea of Père Lachaise. It went even beyond Christianity for me. It seemed to point to the intersection between life and death. You see, seeing crosses over crypts and mausoleums seemed to send me a message, even at 17, that to remember that life is fleeting. And remember those who had come before me. Once it was known, however, that I liked crosses, people began to give them to me as gifts. Has that happened to you? You say you like something, and then, don't say you like a cow, because they're going to give you 500 little cow trinkets. It's a gift, but that happens to you, I guess, yeah. So I have a hearty collection of crosses now, shaped and carved, fired and molded in silver and in bronze. But the pinnacle of my collection of crosses, I have to tell you, is a New Orleans driftwood cross. It is most obviously the evidence of the crossing of cultures. It's decorated with a statue of St. Christopher affixed on it with some chicken wire. Folk art painted shells all over it, and of course, a real chicken foot. A little bit of voodoo. Scares my mother to death. But in my research, I have found most fascinating, what I found most fascinating is the versatility of that symbol. The power that it has over so many different cultures. Its ability to incorporate, to take into its body, to take into its meaning, whatever culture that happens to contain it. And its ability to be able to translate a radical message of rejecting duality. This versatile message of hope, that there's truth in paradox. And that's part of the message that I want to bring to you this morning. You see, the meaning of any symbol, like the cross, comes from a variety of different places. Meaning doesn't just happen, right? You have to add it up, right? You have to add it up. Add up the various meanings to land on the truth. And that addition sign happens to be a cross as well, right? So we have to add the history of the symbol to the intention of the one who's using it or declaring it or wearing it. Or maybe we could turn things on their side a little bit and multiply, once again, a cross, now on its side. Multiply the cultural meaning of the symbol with the interpretation of the observer, the person wearing it. It's not just one thing. It's not fixed. It's a process. So where meaning lies is quite tricky. When we read a story, when we speak, the real meaning, the truth, lies somewhere between the speaker, the symbols or the language, and the listener or the observer. It lies somewhere in between. So for me, the truth lies at the center point, at the crossroads, where all of these meanings intersect. One of the reasons I have such a deep affection for the Bible is that it has this capacity to be able to hold multiple meanings. First of all, in the Bible, the cross shows up all over the place, not as a noun, but as a verb. Crossing rivers and towns, crossing over to the other side. It's this beautiful, rich metaphor for the journey that we all find ourselves in this world, in this space where we're aware of our own life and our own death. The first time that it's actually used as a noun in the Bible, it's not the cross of Jesus that they refer to, but it's the crossroads. That choice point in our lives where we must make a decision of which path to take. The choice point about where our future will come from. The image brought to mind immediately for me is an intersection, right? Where we're at the center trying to make a choice, trying to make meaning. And several weeks ago, we were blessed to have Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker here at All Souls preaching from this pulpit on her new book, Saving Paradise. And Dr. Parker explained in her research that the main message of Christianity up until Charlemagne was not about the crucifix, was not about the suffering of Jesus. It was about paradise, it was about love. So if we didn't have the crucifix until Charlemagne, what did we have before Charlemagne? Because if Charlemagne happened in 950 something, what did we have before that, between 1st century and 9 something? Well, before the crucifix, the Christian symbols were not, it was not the cross that Jesus died on. It wasn't even this, this cross that looks like a human where it's up towards the top. There were a lot of these around because they were pagan and sun-worthy worship. But until 300, we really didn't have a symbol at all. It was often that you'd see the fish, or you wouldn't see anything really. People would just say that they were followers. But then around 300, Constantine came along. We know about Constantine, right? Scholar John Denham Parsons wrote that the cross was not the torture instrument that killed Jesus. During the first 3 centuries of our common era, no relic, they can find no evidence that bears representation of an instrument of execution that we use as the Latin cross. So the word often translated as cross that appears as mark, and I want you to know I brushed up on my Greek for you, stauros, S-T-A-U-R-O-S, which simply means stake. It just means a stake. And time after time again, they started translating that as cross. But it does not imply cross in its meaning. It's just a bar that was put in the ground. It's just a stake used usually to torture people. And there were many different kinds. But there are no depiction of the Latin cross as we know it, as a stauros, until the 4th century, until the theologians of Constantine got a hold of the message. And Constantine worshipped the sun, S-U-N. This was his source of life, and his famous vision using the Greek letters XPI as an adaptation of Gaulish solar deity. It was a way for him to unify 2 armies under the same mission. That's what that was about. And it was an easy visual thing to do because as the boats were coming over across the horizon, guess what they saw with the mast and the bow? It was an easy way to unite armies. And so the nation became Christian with sun day as their Sabbath, and the sign of the sun god became our symbol. So, you might be wondering, what does all this mean and why does this matter? You've been talking for 15 minutes. What are you trying to say? What matters is that the sign of the cross had a long history before Christianity that is grounded in the idea of giver of life. It's about being a giver of life.